Alright, I am out here in an undisclosed location. Today I want to talk about understanding small ponds for bass fishing. I want to go over some of the conditions you have to deal with, some of the things you want to pay attention to, and some of the things that you need to focus on to be as successful as you can. You know, it's very difficult to come out here to these smaller ponds in these random neighborhoods that I go into and try to figure out a new environment fairly quickly. So I'm going to kind of go over all of that, explain it, touch on it a little bit, and give you some tips. So let's get into it. So the first thing you want to look for when you go to a new environment, a small pond such as this one, is figuring out your current environment. What is the climate? What are the conditions that you're in? Today it's cold, it's windy. You see the way that the wind is blowing, and what you want to focus on is where the direction leads you with the wind. So the wind right now is going east, and that means that it's going to be blowing a lot of the bait fish going towards like krill and stuff like that, and it's going to bring the bass in that same direction. If I were to fish over that way away from the wind, probably wouldn't get nearly as much action. So you definitely want to focus on the direction of the wind and the climate that you're in to start things off and not waste a lot of time. Another tip, it's very difficult to get a feel for your bait sometimes when you're fishing in 2-3 foot shallow water. Some of this water is even a foot deep. It's very difficult to get a good feel of it when it gets picked up. That leads to, unfortunately, gut hooking a lot of fish, not understanding when you have a fish on, losing bites, so on and so forth. So what you can do in this type of situation, I only have about 2 feet of depth right here, not very deep at all. The deepest part I'm probably not even going to fish, to be honest with you, because I'm going with the wind along the bank, is you want to watch your line. Keep an eye on your line. If your line goes tight, if your line starts moving laterally, that's an indication that you have something on. It's very difficult to get a thump when you're using something that descends downward, descends like a wacky rig that I have here, wacky worm. A lot of times the bass are just going to scoop it up off the bottom as they're swimming. They're not really going to give you a hard bite, especially in the winter when you're doing finesse fishing. They're going to be very lazy. They're usually just going to skip it up, and that's going to be it. They're not going to give you a ton of thumps that you normally get. So keep an eye on your line. Watch your line. If it goes tight, if it starts moving laterally, you want to make sure that you keep an eye on that, because that's an indicator that you have something on. Thirdly, some quick tips for you. You want to pay attention to the shading. So as you can see here, I've got shadows casted from, say, an electrical box coming over. The sun rises in the east, obviously, and that's the way the wind's blowing. You want to keep an eye on the shadows and what shade you have to work with. This fish, they're going to be in those darker areas. So for example, my first cast is going to be right where the tip of my pole, my rod, is pointing to. That's the darkest point, and that's the way the direction of the wind is blowing in. That's going to be more than likely where fish are going to be hanging out. They're not going to be in the sunlight right now, especially wintertime. So just wanted to give you three quick tips on understanding small pond bass fishing, the conditions you want to pay close attention to, not walking out randomly and just hoping you get lucky tossing it in. That's a no-no zone down there for me. It's exposed in the sun, the wind's going in the wrong direction. It's a little deeper out in the middle, don't want to mess with that. This is what I'm going to be focusing on today, and I guarantee you I'm going to have a lot of success. Thanks for watching. Fishing Spot Reviewer out. We will catch you next time. Thanks.